the scenes with LTM.
Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Rosenstein and welcome to another episode of Behind the Scenes with LTM. Today we're going to talk about production teams. What are they? I don't know. We're gonna find out. All the positions, how one becomes a part of the production team, how directors work with these teams, and everything in between. Today we'll be talking with Linda Ferreira, Marge Patefield, John Pike, and Todd Santa Maria. We'll talk to John and Todd later, but first we have Linda Ferreira, who was the production manager at LTM for 4 years and has held almost every position on a production team. And Marge Patefield, who has worked on many design teams and has helped in selecting who gets to be on the team. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Andrew.
Happy to be here.
So right off the bat, we'll keep it basic. What exactly is a production team in general terms, and how many positions are there within it usually?
So production team is really the group of people that make sure that all sort of the technical aspects of the show happen. So, the different roles that are there, there's quite a few of them. So at LTM, the production team is typically headed by a production manager or technical director, maybe similar to other theaters, but that's definitely how we do that. And that person is just responsible for making sure the production team meets on a regular basis. Everybody knows what's going on. They make sure that they have all those different roles filled. And then from there on the production team, we have the stage manager. After all the rehearsals happen, they are the ones who run the show. So they need to know about all the technical elements that are going on. So they are very much part of this production team. So they know what all these different people are doing. So in addition to them, we have, like I said, a lot of these designers. So I'll talk about a couple and then maybe Marge can help fill in on some of them. So we have a set designer. They're the ones making sure, what you see on the stage sets the location of the show, whether it's the interior of the house, an outdoor scene. They figure out what all of that should look like. You've got a lighting designer. They make sure that, everybody can be seen, but they're also going to make sure that, they set the appropriate mood and tone of the show. And then you have a sound designer. So the sound designer really has two components to it. One is just making sure that the actors can all be heard. So, they'll make sure that there's microphones and that you can hear people appropriately. But then the sound designer is also responsible for sound effects. So if the show has a thunderstorm, we have to hear thunder and lightning, and you don't hear the lightning, but you'll hear the thunder and you'll hear the rain. You might need sounds of dogs barking or a car engine or whatever. They're responsible for making sure all those sounds happen. The one other role is our props designer. They're the ones responsible for all those things that you see. So if somebody walks on with a cane or somebody needs a cup of coffee, all of those things the props person has to find, make, whatever the case may be. Marge, how about you fill in on some of the others?
Well, you have a music director who directs the music in the show, and most times with us is also the music rehearsal pianist. And there are many times when she works one-on-one, 2-to-1, make sure you know your music, your harmonies, and then the whole group of people. There is also a choreographer who will teach you the dance steps and help you through the difficult dance steps. And we have people that are in the shows that aren't really dancers, but we have some really good choreographers that can make it look great on the stage. We have a costumer who is responsible to design all the costumes, either build them from scratch, go up in our attic, take what we have, borrow from other theater groups. We might also have a person who does wigs. Same thing, design the wigs, build the wigs, and bring them to the theater. And of course, the director of the show is responsible for anything that happens on stage, anything. You have to be pretty even-keeled to direct a show. You have to listen to the problems. You have to be able to strategize, talk to different people. You're the liaison between the people on the show, the designers, the sound people, the costumer, but everything goes through the director. Anything that happens on that chair, on that stage is the director's responsibility.
That sounds like too much work.
It's a lot of work.
But I imagine there could be even more roles if you needed, a fight choreographer or a dialect coach or a special makeup artist. So just how detailed can it really get?
It can get very detailed, really. I did one show and we met with someone, we had to learn to speak Italian, and we met with somebody who went through Italian and talked to us and gave us all the tools we needed to sound like we were Italian. And again, fight scenes. We had that in one of our shows, Camelot, somebody that could do a fight scene. And you bring somebody in that's very familiar and can teach you how to do this safely. That's a big thing, safely. I mean, the swords aren't real, but you can still get hurt.
Right.
We have choreographers that will deal with, doing the choreography of the show, but there may be a particular specialty tap number or something, and you want to take those people aside and have somebody that can handle that. There are a lot of different things to a show, different little specialties, and you need to bring in the person that can deal with that is knowledgeable and can do it safely.
That's a good answer. I'm satisfied.
I'm glad.
So how does a production team get put into place? Does a theater company post the open positions and ask for resumes, or do directors go out and seek out people who are available?
Well, it's kind of a compilation of all of that, wouldn't you say, Linda? I mean,
Absolutely.
we do directly recruit for directors, even though we know we have particular directors. We still will recruit on our Facebook page. We put the request out and we get the resumes. I've done that many times, looking for directors, and we interview them. We bring the directors in and we interview them, and we ask them what their vision is of the show. We've done that many times. So we really do talk to the directors, whether we know them or not. And even if it's a director we have worked with, we still bring them in for an interview and talk about the vision of the show and what your expectation is. So we put a lot of time into trying to find the right fit, the right director for the right show. And if we bring you in and you don't direct for this, say 2022, if you don't direct for that period, you may direct another show at another time. And we do keep everything on file, and we do go back to people. And there are people we are comfortable with. We know people's limits, That's basically what we do with directors. And we search the same thing for technical people.
It's usually been a little bit harder to find some of the technical roles. So we will either go to people that we've used before and reach out to them. We may go to somebody that we've seen do something at another theater and be like, wow, that person, did great lighting or the sound effects, whatever, and reach out to them. There are some directors who will bring in their own people, and that has happened. We had a director for a show who brought in their own set designer and lighting designer. It was great. And I think it's just in some cases the director is more comfortable working with somebody that they already know, when other members of the team will be new, but they sort of have these core people that they worked with before. So lots of different ways. And as Marge mentioned, the Facebook community pages, we use those, and we can post out there if we can't find somebody. But in those cases, we would definitely be looking for a resume of some sort and to get references of the people's work.
Going a little deeper with that, were you ever in a situation where you were unable to fill a certain position, and what did you do? Did you put someone with little experience in the role, or would someone else on the team step up to fill the position?
It's definitely happened to me. So I was the production manager at LTM for 4 years, and during that time there were multiple shows where we just could not find someone. So in some cases, you did get somebody maybe who stepped up and said, sure, I'll help out, but I don't want to be the one primarily responsible. So, in that case, a lot of times maybe I would work with them so that they didn't have all the pressure on them, but it was somebody to help. And it sort of got them to learn about the role and what it could be, so that, maybe the next time they'd be willing to take it on. And there were definitely shows where we just couldn't find someone. And because I had a background covering a lot of the technical areas, I ended up taking on a couple of different roles in a show.
That happened to me. If you remember, Linda, I got an email from you about a particular show costuming, and the show was 2 weeks away from opening, 3 weeks, and no costumer. And I said, when do you open again? No, there I was costuming a small musical. Thank God it was a small musical. And so things like that happen, but we volunteers try to work together and support each other. And things like this do happen. Things happen during the run of a show, and that's what we're there for. We all help each other out.
Would you ever throw someone into a role right away, or would you, like to prefer to have them shadow someone during a show first to see if they even like it?
That would be preferable.
Right.
To shadow somebody, especially if they don't have any expertise in what they're interested in. Yeah. I mean, that would be preferable. Will you come and let's see? But things happen.
Yeah, and we've definitely thrown new volunteers in, and some of it'll depend on their background. Right. So if somebody, used to do sewing for a living, maybe they worked in a dress shop or, at a bridal shop, and they were interested in doing, costume design, and maybe it was a show set in current day. So really we knew the majority of what they're doing is altering clothing to fit people, maybe throw them ahead in as the costume designer. Definitely prefer to have them sort of shadow and do things. But like Marge said, you never know. Sometimes it happens.
How do you collaborate with everyone on a design team? Does everyone meet together, or do individuals meet separately throughout the process?
We have a production meeting, right? Linda goes to a lot of the production meetings.
Sure. So the production teams are really just a way for everybody who's working on the show to know what's going on. So those initial meetings, the director is going to present his or her vision to the team. So this is what they want. This is, for sets, costumes, lighting, everything. They'll cover it all. Sort of, this is my vision for the show. And then after that, we meet on a regular basis just to make sure that everybody's still on track, making sure things are happening, and then also taking into consideration if something's changed. Once those actors are on stage and the director's working with them, things are always bound to change. So, those production meetings give us a chance to discuss them, to go through, maybe there may be a problem with something that a director has asked someone to change. And so it's a chance for everybody to talk through that and come to a consensus.
In regards to a design team, everyone's preferences are different. What would you say makes a good member of a design team, regardless of role, aside from flexibility and just being a good member of the team?
The willingness to work with a number of people and listen to the different ideas and suggestions. That to me is, you have to be able to communicate with someone. Yeah. You may not have the greatest ideas about design, but if you can listen and work and help, that to me is a number one. It's a team effort. It's not yours. It's not mine. It's a team effort. Yeah. And sometimes you forget about that. We are a team. Let's work to make the team look good, not to make Linda look good, not to make Marge look good, to make the team look good. And sometimes you lose sight of that, but that's it's important.
And I definitely agree. So collaboration, really that whole teamwork, huge, because yes, we encourage designers to bring their own individuality to the show, but in the end, it really is a team effort. So you can't make it all about you, so you can't put an Art Deco set in the middle of Oklahoma because you think that that's the thing to do. It's got to be a team effort. It all has to fit together.
It's like you have little slots and everybody fills in what they're best at. And then hopefully by the end, the slots are all filled. And yes, this is what I want. So everybody contributes.
But then the one thing that I would also add is creativity of your design team. So, all shows are on a budget, particularly in the community theater area. So you've got to be creative in how to get that best looking set, or the costumes that fit, the lighting, the sound, everything that fits on a budget.
How important is it for a design team to work well with the director of a show?
So the design team needs to be able to work really well with their director, because they have to see that director's vision. So it is a team, and everybody has to bring their element to it. But in the end, you're all working to meet that director's vision. So you need them to be able to understand the director. The director needs to be able to understand them so that they can sort of work together to get to the right place.
A lot of times the director will have a vision that we just can't complete the whole vision as they see it. So it has to be tweaked a bit. Reason why you need people to be able to get along and discuss things. So if you want something that's 35 feet tall, we can't accommodate that. We're going to work with them. Well, we can do 20 feet, but you really have to communicate. And we want to do the director's vision.
To give the director's perspective on working with a production team, we have two local directors, John Pike and Todd Santa Maria. In addition to directing many shows, both have held other positions on a production team. John has been a musical director and has helped with set design, and Todd has been choreographer. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be with you, Andrew.
We can start from the beginning. When did you start directing, and how did you learn to put together a production team? Was there a lot of anxiety about putting together your first team, or was it something you picked up with experience along the way?
I still haven't recovered. No. My first show that I directed was actually at LTM, and I was asked to direct it. Not really sure why. Probably nobody else left. But Debbie Freud asked me to direct The Drowsy Chaperone, and so that was like my first experience there. And working with the design team, I was really lucky to have a really good production team there. Who brilliant set designer, brilliant costumer. Brilliant props people. So they all I came in with a strong team who knew what they were supposed to do. So that was a great learning experience for me to work with people who were seasoned in those areas.
I started directing, I guess, in college. Like guys, I thought I'd be an actor, and I learned by my sophomore year I was a terrible actor, but I wanted to be in the theater. And so over a series of jobs, I worked for Goodspeed Musicals for about 15 years, and I got to observe incredible directors and designers and saw how those teams work together. And then actually, I started directing in serious when I actually when I left there to go into academia. And so I just wasn't trained in directing, but, kind of picked it up from a lot of different, well-schooled people who had been doing it for quite some time.
Do you notice that as you do more shows that you want to work with designers you've worked with before? Do you find it frustrating when you have to work with new people?
I don't know if frustrating is the word. I think if I had my choice, and one of the benefits of working at a theater multiple times is you get to know who the designers are and you get to know who the people are. So usually I'll know going into it who the people that they're considering are. And I've been very lucky because they've said, oh, well, we're looking at this person. What do you think? Or this person. The last show I directed was Mamma Mia. That was a million years ago, it feels like. But they brought in the best of the best there. And they were all people that I knew. They filled that production with amazing people. So I didn't have to worry about that. I am leery about working with new people just cold in those positions just because I don't know. And like you said, with directing, there's so many different moving pieces that, at this point, I'm open to, I love working with new people, provided that I know something about them or they come with a referral or something. Right. But yeah, I'm not wedded to working with the same people over and over again.
I like old people. I like new people. I like mixing it up. Some theaters you work out, not necessarily LTM, but some have resident costume designers or a resident set designer. And so if you want the job, that's who you're working with. And you learn that process as well. Sometimes I like to bring someone in who I know has the skill set for a specific type of show. And there's other times where I just don't have anybody in mind. And the theater says, how about A, B, or C? And I'll say, let's talk to them. And then we'll see if that person and I hit it off. One of the things I've kind of learned with production teams is that, as the director, you need to know at least a little bit about each area. You should know a little bit about lighting, a little bit about costume. You don't have to be an expert, but at least be able to try to speak their language. Don't expect their language to come to you. And sometimes you know a little bit more, and you're a little dangerous. Sometimes designers, too much, because then you don't want to infringe upon their artistic, input. But I think that's less likely than not knowing enough. Don't put yourself in the dark. Otherwise, when you get to technical rehearsals, you're going to be asking for things that are impossible by a designer.
I understand the production meetings are used to keep all designers on the same page with the director. So what do you do at the first production meeting? Do you go in with ideas, or do you let the designers tell you what they're thinking first?
I usually know that the one thing I don't want the Broadway production. Everything should be its own animal. And I force that upon myself. And I ask my designers, think differently. Think how else this can be done than the way that people have always experienced it.
I go into a show now with a pretty clear vision of what I want to do, whether it's presentational, representational. If we want to make it more theatrical, if we want to, I'm pretty specific about that stuff now. So when I usually at the first meeting with the design team, I usually just do my pitch about how I'm seeing the show, what the lens is. I give them the framework. Like for example, I'm using Mamma Mia as an example. It's set in Greece, and so I've been to Greece, I've been to Santorini. So I came into that with some pretty concrete ideas of what I was looking for. But then what I do then, and then what I say is then here's how I want the set to function, and then allow them to use their expertise, their talents, and then say, okay, now show me how we can make this practical, safe, and financially, that's doable.
I kind of follow on the same pattern that Todd does. I like to have ideas coming in there. They are not set in stone, but I like to have a visual concept and a historical concept if there's needs one, or a stylistic concept. So it's flowing from me to the other people. They're not just saying, oh, go do your own thing, and then we wind up with 4 different shows coming back at you. So everybody's kind of on the same page. Yeah, there's nothing worse than a designer who doesn't come in and then you don't see their work until tech, and you're going, I didn't know that was coming in there. Mm-hmm. Because as things are constantly changing and in rehearsal, and you're trying to plot out how the show's going to move, particularly in the sense of a musical where you're always in motion because of the way musicals are written, then you can't have those surprises and expect to have everything lay out properly right before performance.
That leads into my next question. Do you like to meet with the entire design team consistently throughout the process, or do you move in pieces and meet with specific designers individually?
I'd like to see my designers no less than every couple weeks. And then I often will invite them to a rehearsal where something particularly that involves them would be good for them to see. Now, they're generally welcome to come in at any rehearsal. I love having them there as long as they kind of stay to the background and not get involved in the work that we're trying to do at that time. But I don't like distant designers. I just like to know what's happening, so we can, if there's a problem, we can solve it right there, because they may not know, oh, I've decided to stage it this way, and it'd be great if this piece of set could work this way and not have to solve it in tech.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think every couple of weeks at first. Once you get closer to production, you see them a little bit more.
All right, now we can talk some trash. So in your experiences, obviously without name dropping or anything, what would be your pet peeves in a production or design team?
For me, it's inflexibility, I think.
Mm-hmm.
No one, especially if you're trying to do something a little different, no one gets it right off the bat. There will be mistakes in rehearsal. You don't want to waste people's time by having them create something that's not going to be used, but by the same token, not everything is going to work. And you have to be willing to admit that. And everybody has to be on that page. I know there have been questions before, do you like having designers in rehearsal? And I said, yeah, I do, because I like them to see what is happening at the moment, and they can spur things that, make me think. But if they say, oh, this is the design and that's what it is, take it or leave it, that makes it hard. It kind of puts the cast and myself and the choreographer and the musical director into a box that takes much longer to try and figure out how to work around.
I agree 100% on that. I would also add laziness, entitlement, all the things that make people just dreadful human beings, just in general.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
It's yeah. I mean, that just goes across the board. I think it's I mean, people not thinking outside the box, coming to a design meeting with like I Googled, the last production on Broadway, and here, no.
Okay. The obvious. That's what I figured.
And also, Andrew, it's interesting because as Todd was saying, if they just Google the last production on Broadway, they have millions of dollars to do that, and you're trying to do something on a budget. So sometimes you have to have creativity when you don't have dollars, even that much more creativity.
And that's actually the thing about community theater, local theaters, that I always find inspiring, is because we don't have the resources that Broadway have, and that's why I don't think it's ever a fair comparison to do those things. But I think that it forces us to think outside the box. It forces us to work with what we have, and in many cases, brilliant, amazing things come out of that.
How do you handle a situation where you may not agree with the ideas or decisions that are being made by members of the design team?
It would take me kind of push the limit to say no, absolutely. But a lot of times what I may do is bring in other members of the team and say, is there a way to make this work, or that I'm not seeing? Sometimes the stage manager can be a good balance between that.
The great thing about theater is it's a collaborative art form, and and that's why I love it so much. That said, it's the director's responsibility to be the leader of the group and to provide the vision and the structure of the group. And it depends on what the disagreement is when it comes to the design stuff. If it's a matter of, cost, functionality, practicality, safety, and if there's like something that I'm not seeing because of those reasons, then we can have an informed conversation. If it's because the designer has done like their homework and said, you want it this way, but if you want it period, or if you want it specific, it should be this way, we can have a discussion about that. If it's a discussion where I want the walls pink and they want it blue, and it's a matter of just like, taste in anything, and at the end of the day, the walls will be pink. So that's kind of where it is. And that's the importance of getting those specifics down in a production. And again, with flexibility, but at least giving everybody the idea that, we are looking at, you don't want to do like you just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. You want to just make sure that everybody knows that, that right now the walls will be, an off color, so that the costumer doesn't put everybody in like, something that makes them camouflage themselves into the back. That's why it's so imperative that you get everybody in a room all at once from the very beginning, and try to get as much as you can out in the open first, knowing things are going to change. Just so that kind of stuff won't happen down the road.
See, I don't want to be the boss. I can never be the boss because I hate confrontation. I'm really good at making awkward situations. I'm not good with dealing with the consequences after. I know you both have held multiple roles on a design team, and Todd, I know you've choreographed a show as well as directed it. And John, I know you've been both the director and musical director for a production. Is this something that you request, or do you not recommend directors holding multiple positions during a show?
Well, I always choreograph my shows because there's part of me that I guess is a bit of a control freak where that's concerned, because I'm so concerned about, because I want things to constantly move. I want things to constantly flow. And I think that just because I choreographed before that, I think that just was kind of just like a leftover from there. I will say that during Oklahoma, we brought another choreographer to do the Dream Ballet in, because I'm not adept enough to do something like that. And I got to say, it was really nice to have somebody else take on like a 12-minute dance piece, and I just sit back and watch. That was really, really nice. But yeah, I choreograph all my shows because just because of that reason. I don't know if that was a satisfactory answer or not.
No, absolutely. Because I mean, obviously it's a ton more work, but I think in your mind it's easier in terms of what you're trying to execute in your head, at least. Like it's worth, obviously worth the extra work.
I would advise no one to ever direct and musical direct. I've done it twice, but only because they're under very difficult circumstances that someone had an illness and I had to take over. As a musical director, you cannot keep your eyes on the stage unless you have really spectacular assistants who are watching your show. Once you're conducting a show, your head's buried in your score, or in the case of the piano. So it's just a not great situation. I did a production, I was very happy with it, about 10 years ago, a production of Big the Musical based on the Tom Hanks film. Very complicated, had a cast of about 60, an orchestra of about 18.
Oh, wow.
And there was no way for me to really see what was going on in dress rehearsals and before that, because my head was buried in the score. So unless unless the place is on fire, don't do it.
I wouldn't want, I mean, and this is coming from, I know I just went on a long thing about me choreographing and control and being a control freak about that. I want to work with lots of different people. Like, I wouldn't want to be putting myself into a position where it's just like me in like a dark room, like a mad scientist doing everything by myself. I like working with people who are amazing at what they do, who are fun, who are smarter than me, who see things that I don't see, because it doesn't take much for that to happen. So it's fun to work with people.
Also, good set designer gets you out of problems. They can solve.
Right.
I can get from here to here, and they say, "Well, you just can do this." I'll go, "Oh, thank you," And so, if you're doing it all yourself, you're kind of boxing yourself in.
I'll keep it vague, but what's the biggest technical challenge either of you have come in contact with?
For me, it was with a couple different shows, and usually they're those ones that have a certain expectation by the audience because it was done that way in the film, and it is a kind of central piece to it. There were a couple of these things in LTM Shrek that I had to deal with, but the largest one actually wasn't on Shrek. It was actually one of this production I mentioned, a Big, that I directed. We had a full 88 key light up dancing piano that weighs a ton, and making that thing make sure it was working technically all the time, as well as having the stage full of kids and a number of other things. It was certainly a challenge to make sure that it was done safely, that it made sense, that it fulfilled the audience expectations of what they had seen in a film, because it is such an iconic element to that, well, in that case, that movie, and hence that piece of theater.
My challenge, I actually knew about going into it, but it was the first show I ever directed. It was in Drowsy Chaperone, and there's this one song in the show called "Show Off," where it's the whole show, the whole thing is a constant litany of gags of things going on, and it's the whole point of the song. But there was one thing that required this ventriloquist joke. It came at the end of the song where the leading actress has to take a glass of water and drink it, but yet she's still supposed to be singing. We weren't going to go with real ventriloquism because none of us knew how to do that. So we decided to record the woman singing the song ahead of time, and then that would be a sound cue so that during that specific point that would come up. So that was the one song where the tempo was set in stone, like from the get-go, and we could never deviate from that because the recording was done in the tempo that was, that day that we did it. We set it with the music director, and then but it was a matter of getting that fit with the music, getting the cue called correctly, and there were so many things going into that 3 seconds of show. I think we spent a lot of time on that, but it was worth it because it worked out great, and it produced the effect that we wanted.
Yeah, it's just a lot of. I mean, the whole thing is just problem solving and making lemonade, but that's the fun.
It's about solving problems. You never know what's going to be around the corner, and you have to be able to solve that problem. You can have all the greatest artistic ideas in your head, but cold reality hits you, and this set piece is not going to move, and this action's not going to be. You got to fix it. That's the way it is. It's not. It's watching the sausage get made a little bit.
Thank you very much, Linda, Marge, John, and Todd, for joining us this week on Behind the Scenes with LTM, part of the LTM at Home, our series of virtual programming. We'll be doing new videos every few weeks and posting them on YouTube. And if you have any questions about anything we talked about in this video or topics you'd like to see discussed, you can email us at bts@cheneyhall.org. To find our new videos, when they're posted, you can go to www.cheneyhall.org/YouTube, or find us on Facebook at Little Theatre of Manchester. Links to these, as well as our other social media pages, can be found in the description box below. Thank you and have a good night.
Bum, 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 bum.